great to see so many of you here. My name is Maria Arvidsson, and I want to start my presentation with a question. Why are you here? I hope it is because you're curious about UX, because that's why I'm here. I started my path studying industrial design, and in the beginning I couldn't really find my place as a designer. And it was only when I found out about UX and usability that I knew what my passion was. And since then I've worked as a user researcher, UX designer, product owner, and finally now as head of product and UX for Usabilla. And today I will share my vision on UX. What does a UXer actually do? And what is good and bad UX about? I don't think I'll be able to make you all skilled UX professionals today, but maybe we can take a step in that direction. So let's start from the beginning. UX, user experience. What is it actually, and what does a UXer do? Well, to start with, there is no commonly defined definition for these things, but this is one that I like and that I relate to when I work with user experience design. It's about creating good products that are easy to use, delightful to interact with. But the UX field is very broad. It's got many dimensions, and it includes all kinds of different disciplines, which makes it harder to define, actually. But it can be about interaction design, information architecture, topography, and at its core, it's about mixing sociology and cognitive science, and looking at how people and products interact. But the field is also changing a lot. It was very different a few years ago, and I'm sure it will change a lot in the coming years, while I think people will get more and more specialized in the digital field. Let's look a little bit more at what the UXer do. And it varies, of course, but I think all of it includes a lot of creativity, communication, and putting the user in focus. I will show you some favorite examples from where I work. And in my mind, the UX's job is obviously to emphasize with the users, to build the best possible experience for them and for their situations. That's the core, being close to the user, and that's of course what the U stands for after all. And it includes a lot of user research, interviews, usability tests, explorative research, focus group sessions, observations, all those kind of things. And after collecting a lot of data, the UXer must analyze it and translate it into insights. And there are many ways to go about this as well. Hello, please find a seat. There are a few more over here. And analyzing often includes organizing a lot of information, a lot of post-its, connecting the dots, looking for patterns. Infographics and sketches and posters can help you in this process to also try to communicate your insights to your colleagues. And of course, the UXer does a lot of sketching, brainstorming, discussing, and analyzing the problems and needs in the current situations. In the best of worlds, we're also doing desktop research, reading up on behavioral theories, asking developers for help, understanding technology and limitations there might be, looking at best practices, etc. And wireframing is a very important part of a UX's work. It's about creating low-fidelity designs, getting the rough ideas down, simply how is the page structured, what can the user do, what information is shown, without adding the final visual layer yet. Creating personas is also a great method to help connect to different user groups, and it's very helpful as a way to give your users a name and a face so that you can actually relate to them when you are creating products for them. Another method is to map out and describe the customer journey. So you basically try to understand the needs, the behaviors, the thoughts, and the feelings that your users have throughout the different touch points with your product or services. So to try to look at the entire process, it often starts by emphasizing and understanding the user and their behaviors, as well as the context they are in. We move on from there, defining then the problem, what are we actually trying to solve, and then moving further to ideation, aligning the technological possibilities and limitations with the user needs and the business goals. Then you, of course, often start creating sketches, wireframes, maybe you make a prototype, a clickable one or something like that that you can test with users. And then the iteration continues. Now when you know a bit about the basics, we're going to get into more interesting stuff, actually good and bad UX. And I think it is like this. It's very easy to talk about bad UX. You all know it. It's those times when you get so frustrated you want to throw your mobile or phone out the window. That's bad. But it's harder to actually see what's good UX, because it's often invisible unless you know where to look. Let's though start with a few bad examples. Fortunately, we don't see those kind of forms around much anymore, because long forms are a major turn-off for any user. If you're going to give your users work, make sure you choose it carefully, because too much is a safe way to lower conversions. And if there is a lot of information you need to collect, make sure to spread it across several pages to make it more manageable. Also, don't ask for more than is needed. There's a lot of things that can be automated today. If you know a zip code in a city, you can easily already know the street name, so you don't have to ask for it. And finally, in this example, I think it's quite interesting that they placed the reset button so close to the continue. Obviously, a recipe for disaster in UX terms. But we can also look closer to ourselves. At Usabilla, we had a problem with our navigation that only allowed for 2 information levels, which made it really hard for us when we wanted to extend our product suite. So to solve this problem, we went live with a new vertical navigation a few weeks ago with a structure that's much more flexible and that supports rather than confuses the user when they are navigating our site. Moving on, UX is of course not limited to the digital space. It's everywhere around us. And when you start looking for it, there's no way back. I like this example as well, because in the physical world, we base our understanding to a big part on bodily use cues. From the form of this handle, how would you think you can open the door? Pulling or pushing? Pulling, right? Well, I'm sorry, guys, but this is the door you have to push to open. And here we are dealing with contradicting use cues. And bodily interactions speak stronger to us than text does, which means that this will, for many people, be a slight frustration. But to make this good and bad UX a little bit more complicated, I think there's also another kind of UX, which is harder to define as either good or bad. Because to truly say if something is good or bad, you need to know what the goal was that you were trying to achieve. And in many cases today, it's more about optimizing conversions and making sure that the business goals are reached rather than maybe the goals of the user itself. Let's look at an example. This is the side of UX that uses psychology to sometimes trick us into taking actions that we wouldn't have otherwise done. False feeling of urgency, for example, making us click that buy button quicker, or accidentally ordering an insurance while you only wanted to buy a flight ticket. It's good UX in terms of achieving your goal for the business then, while it's bad in the sense of not caring about the user's needs and feelings. And this is an example from Ryanair's old website. They were smart to hide the option to opt out from a travel insurance in the list of all the countries. It's very hard to find. But I was curious how they actually solved this in their revamp, because they made a new design. And they improved it slightly. Now you can actually see in the drop-down that it is about insurance, but the opt-out option is still hidden between the countries. So, for me, I still think that UX is about the definition we had in the beginning. It's about finding ways of combining business goals and user goals and seeing how they can go hand in hand. And that's what I mean when I talk about good UX, and that's what I will refer to for the rest of this talk. Now let's look at a good example. I must say I was more than delighted when I made this screenshot. I was sitting at home with my iPad, and I just wanted to open a link on my laptop that I had next to me. So I clicked or tapped to copy the link on my iPad, and I started thinking about how can I easily get this to my computer when, on my computer screen, something started bouncing a little bit. So, well, I clicked it, and automatically, the link I had copied and marked on my iPad was pasted into a browser and opened on my laptop. That's really great. It's something that we would call a seamless cross-device experience. Very, very nice. Now, let's think about a few things you can do to create good UX. How do you get there? And the first thing I would like to say is that good UX is intuitive. That's great. In that way, we are all experts. The problem is that most of the time we're not designing for ourselves, which makes it a little bit trickier. So we need to know our users. And we need to know their, We need to know their motivations, their behaviors, even their ways of thinking. And at Usabilla, we, for example, do that a lot because we're very lucky to have a very proactive and personal, close relationship with our clients. So we work often together when defining our UX and features. One example is from our Usabilla Exchange event, where we invite clients to come and inspire us and other clients, sharing how they work with our tools. And that's really, really inspiring. But unfortunately, socializing with your users isn't enough, because they don't always know what they want. And I would also not say that that's actually their job. It lies in human nature to always try to please and always give an answer, even if you have none. And for me, this is really what UX is about. It's a detective's job. It's finding out, reading between the lines, and really, really understanding your users. And as I mentioned, our users often reach out to us, and they give really great ideas and solutions directly to their problems. And therefore, it's really easy to draw quick conclusions and run with those solutions. But again, don't assume that your user actually knows what's the best solution to their problem. Always go back to the starting point, explore the problem space, and only when you understand the full context, start exploring solutions. You cannot simply ask a user, what should we build, and expect a really smart answer. You should know what you're doing, and you should use the right methods to avoid a biased result. Though it's not only about using the right methods, it's also about using the methods right. And in UX, that can be quite tricky. You have to be very empathic, good at listening, creative and smart, and really being able to drive to the core of the problem and reading between the lines of what your users say. Working with skilled people is a good way to get there, but also using different research methods to get to the core of the problems. Where I work, we run frequent online and offline user studies. We use our own solutions to collect feedback from our users. For example, we just started up a new project with quarterly customer satisfaction surveys within our different products to see what the long-term effects our UX efforts actually have. We're also doing usability testing with clickable prototypes to iterate on our work and make sure that we are building the right thing before we invest valuable user interface designer time and also development time, of course. We do explorative research, workshops, and brainstorms to define personas or explore possibilities to rethink our products, to give a few examples. And a new initiative, Usabilla 360, it's basically a quarterly focus group that we have with our core users, where we co-design and together explore what the future of our products should look like. Getting back to things to think about. A third thing, it's also not enough to know the ins and outs of your users. You also need to know their context. And here my advice would be, do not blindly follow trends here. What works in one case might be completely different to what works in another. And the needs of your users will strongly depend on the context they are in when they're using your solutions. In our case, we are currently redesigning a part of our platform, and we had a look at what kind of devices and screen sizes our users work on. And it turned out they are almost always at their workstation, which means that they have a really big screen at hand. So we decided to invest time in optimizing for large screen and desktop use, but not in mobile yet. Maybe in the future we'll see that that's needed, but for now that would be premature optimization. Another example of good use of context comes from Citymapper. It's a public transportation app. I don't know if some of you use it. It's quite nice. And this is how the landing page looks like normally. But now imagine that you're in a situation, it's in the middle of the night, you're tired and tipsy after a party, you're stuck here in Amsterdam North and you want to get home as soon as possible. How nice then that the app knows that, and it will make sure that the button, get me home, that you're looking for so desperately, is bigger. Nice, right? All right, another thing to think about. Don't reinvent the wheel. Know your stuff. It's a completely different ballgame. For example, creating UX for the digital world compared to the physical one. And experience is really key here. For example, a skilled designer knows that a good mobile experience lies in the details. Just look at the simple login screen. When we are supposed to sign up somewhere or sign in, we have to provide an email, username, and password. And how many cases does an email start with a capital letter? Almost never. So why is the shift key active? And it almost always includes an @ symbol, but there is no @ symbol in this. So these are simple things, right? And every time it's not made for me to easily use it, I get frustrated when the solution is so simple. Finally, know what's technically possible. And I think this is something that UXers should think a lot more about, actually collaborating together with developers. This is one interesting example. Through 20 years of efforts, we've successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for computers to guess. How is that possible? You all know it. We are often asked to create passwords with weird symbols, upper and lowercase capitals, numbers, making it very hard to remember and possibly easy to hack. Well, let's just look at this example. It looks like quite a good password to me, but with, say, 100 guesses per second, it would take a computer 3 days to guess. While by just putting 4 random words together, making it quite long, it's much easier to remember, and I wonder how long it would take. Well, really long for a computer to guess. Why is it that I, as a user, don't know about these things? This is where I think the magic can happen, when developers, technical people that know these kind of things, work together with designers to create really smart stuff. So, main takeaways. Start thinking about what's good and bad, and always think first, what was the goal we tried to achieve? Good UX is invisible unless you know where to look. And it's also intuitive. In that way, we're all experts. But you need to know your stuff. You need to understand your users and their context to be able to make something that's intuitive to them. Look at best practices. Don't assume that your users know the answers, but find the right answers for them. And don't reinvent the wheel. Use best practices, etc. And never forget to collaborate, because that's where the magic happens. Thank you. There is some time for questions if you have any.
Yeah, I'm the VP of engineering in a. I'm a head of engineering in a software company, and we have our own design department, and we really do not get along together. So I was very curious about how you work with engineers and how your process is.
Yeah.
I mean, slightly, just.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's a challenge many product teams today are facing. Maybe also because that was the traditional way of working, and it's hard to find new ways where everyone is adapting and so forth. What we do at Usabilla is we have cross-functional teams. So simply by putting the designers next to the developers, actually physically, you're sitting together, you make sure that they talk more. By making sure that you have stand-ups together, you share each other's work. By making sure that you're working on the same things together, that it becomes a natural thing to do for developers to ask the designers for help and vice versa. I think that's a good way to start, at least. Of course, those things aren't easy. What we also started doing is weekly updates, where the designers or the developers that are interested can already be part of the process of creating designs from the beginning. So we share even the early sketches and ideas we have with the developers, and they can have a say, they can give valuable input, and in that way I hope that different groups and different people actually understand the value of collaborating. That's a few things maybe that could help.
Yeah, we do have cross-functional teams.
But it still doesn't work. Yeah.
We will give it a little bit more time.
Maybe someone else has a good tips to share from the... Yeah?
It'd be nice to do other stuff together more.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, we do that as well.
Everybody shows up.
Most of them, yeah, most of us.
Mm.
Well, then I have only one solution. Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Try that.
You try that too. Yeah. It's challenging, yeah. I think we'll have to think more about it. Any other questions? No, it's all clear. That's very good. Thank you so much for coming.